Welcome back. You're still watching the news review on Power Breakfast. This is Citizen TV. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. We continue discussing the headlines this morning with my panelists Mary Mwangi, Rafael Obonyo, David Osiani and Eric Wanjohi. Just before the break, we were talking about the biggest headline today, and that has to do with a major announcement expected from NASA presidential candidate, or now let's call him NASA leader, Raila Odinga. The elections are done, but we're still not done with the disputes surrounding those polls. On the front page of the Daily of the Standard, Raila's options for NASA as he makes announcement today. Whose options to Raila? This is the biggest talking point today. But now let's move on to other headlines in the inside pages. On page 4 of the Standard, we have this one: battle for key posts in houses begins after a bruising campaign. Those elected now turn their attention to key positions. Now lobbying has started for key leadership slots up for grabs in both the Senate and the National Assembly. MPs who have pulled through the bruising campaigns now have their guns trained on at least 8 strategic House positions and are lobbying for support ahead of the official opening of the 12th Parliament next week. Now in Jubilee, the majority party in both houses, the new MPs are battling for the post of Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Majority Leader and Majority Whip. Meanwhile, the other side, the legislators are lobbying for the positions of Minority Leader and Minority Whip, as well as the leadership of the powerful Public Accounts Committee, that's the PSC, and Public Investments Committee, PIC. We have the faces on that page that could possibly fill up those positions. We have Speaker Justin Muturi, who will be seeking to retain his seat. Majority Leader, Majority Leader in the 11th Parliament, Aidan Duale, will be seeking to have the same position in the 12th Parliament. ODM Chairman John Badi could be seeking to be the leader of Minority in the National Assembly. Aisha Jumwa could be handed the position of a Minority Chief Whip. Kimenini MP Chris Wamalwa was a Deputy Minority Whip in the National Assembly in the 11th Parliament. He could be seeking to retain these positions. Remember, none of these positions is guaranteed, including the speakers. They could all change. Yes. We have Speaker for the Senate, Ekwe Thuro. That position is up for grabs. Leader of Minority in the Senate, Ford Kenya leader Moses Wetangula was in that position in the last Senate. He is the only NASA principal who is currently in Parliament as a senator for Bungoma, so he is likely to retain that position as Minority Leader. Remember, people like CI Senator James Orengo are also there. Francis Nyenze, who was leader of Minority in the National Assembly, is back. Will he get that position again? Now these are the biggest talking points, and probably even borrowing from our discussion just before the break, President Uhuru Kenyatta's need to secure his legacy as he finishes his second term. This will also play a part, because the people you select to these various positions will either make it for him or break it. But remember, William Ruto has ambitions to become president in 2022. He also has a say on who seats on this. So it is a catch-22 situation. And does the president go ahead and retain, for example, Speaker Justin Muturi in that position, or does he go for someone who has an appeal on both sides of the political divide? Justin Muturi was very much criticized of being biased on several occasions, and that was out in the media. Do you think the president would want to retain such an individual in such a serious position?
Well, everything is up in the air right now. It's up to the president right now to send a message of unity, and it would be very interesting if he actually picked different people. I know there is that rumor that things could just stay the way they were because things seem to work that way, but it would be very interesting if he did actually shake things up a bit. As you pointed out rightly, that the deputy president now is thinking forward to 2022, so he has to marshal his support, and so we may also see a lot of his people in these positions. But again, it's all up in the air, and we wait and see.
Yeah. And you know, back in 2013, it was between TNA and URP as the majority coalition, and these positions were negotiated even between the two parties. That's why Aden Duale, who was a member of URP, got a position of leader of majority, and probably Justin Muturi, who was in TNA, got the speaker's position. This time around, they're going in as one party. Yes. So if at all they start negotiating in those lines, it could mean already a split within Jubilee.
Yeah, three things for President Uhuru. I think one is they need to strike a deal. He needs to strike a deal with, of course, his deputy, and tell his deputy, look, you have 2022 and beyond. So that will be your term. Let me lead this second term and see how I can secure my legacy, which is a tough thing, because like you said, William is also eyeing 2022, so he's really interested in terms of who sits where. So that is one, because he cannot shape his legacy by sticking to the deal that they had before. It will be very, 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 very difficult. That is one. Two, I think the president needs to get over the fact that, although it might be contested, the fact that he won elections. He has just half of the country, and start looking at issues of inclusiveness, because that has been a big question in this country. People do not just want to be part of baking the cake, they also want to share in that cake. So whatever proposals he makes, people want to see that we are also part of your circles. We are in your circles. That is very, very important. And three, and lastly, is the fact that people want to see some change. You know, we want to see new faces. You know, we want to see new energies. There are many youthful candidates, youthful people out there who are able. You know, we want to see there are many more women. We have fewer women last
I want to see women.
So people want to see a lot of that change. If he's unable to do that, I think we are going to have people will give up on him, and people will start again, like I said, organizing around the next leader, because they will say, same old, same old.
Yes. Of course, the talk within Jubilee circles is that they do not need to fix what is not broken. So Speaker Justin Muturi has been there. He's done a good job in as far as Jubilee is concerned. They retain him. Aden Duale has done a good job in as far as Jubilee is concerned in the first term. He should be retained. Do you think the president will be looking to retain them?
Before we get that, I think Raphael should have first stated, because he and I are champions for the young people, that we need a cabinet of, we want to see at least 2-3 youth, young, literally below 35, not youth as described by Uhuru and Ruto earlier. It's youth. But coming to this, you know, Aden Duale, just as the country is healing, and for example, the people in Kisumu are wondering what's gone wrong, he's come up and said, we will use our tyranny of numbers to eject Ouko, even before he's elected to that position. Quite cantankerous. And so it is broken. That one broken. They have to fix it. All right. What's going to happen is a vicious battle between Ruto's ambitions and the president's need to leave a legacy. How they handle that? Jubilee is one party or so, they say, but it's two within one. It's the reality we are not going to run away from. That it has half of it loyal to Ruto, half of it loyal to Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, if they can strike that balance, it's going to be, you know, because William is going to say, show me by your deeds that you want me to be president in 2022.
Give me something.
Rumor has it that your people may not want me, so show me. So showing me means probably take the minority leader, give me the speaker.
The majority leader give the speaker.
You know, the majority leader, give me the speaker. And it's also going to be about ambitions probably post Raila Odinga and post Uhuru Kenyatta. So the jostling for seats even among ODM, Wiper MPs is going to be very hard. But the other thing is, I think it's going to be very hard to convince ODM, for example, to cede most ground in leading. You know, maybe minority, the minority leader, minority whip, Senate. Because last time we had Nyenze, because Wiper was quite a force.
And now while there was a coalition, remember this time around, NASA is
amalgamation of
parties. It's not going in as a coalition, so ODM is the second biggest party in parliament.
That's it. But even besides that, you have, for example, Wiper having had a beating, you know, losing 9 seats in its stronghold areas. And you have for the Kenya, you know, there's going to be a lot to account to the leader. You know, Wetangula will have to account to Raila Odinga why his home MP is Jubilee and not Ford Kenya. Now, with those dynamics, therefore, it may then force them to just deputize ODM in most of these positions. You know,
and before we delve too much into the opposition, back to the Jubilee, to the leading the leading side in the House. What do you think the president should do? As David said, probably they could flip
Fred, fortunately, I don't know too much about the individuals you've mentioned, so I can't talk much about them. Yeah?
You don't know
I don't know enough of most of these personalities. But what I know is this: when the president was campaigning, he actually reached out to most of the people who did not make it during the nomination, the Jubilee nominations, and was telling them, wait a minute, I'll work with all of you people. Come, support us now. There's room for everyone. Now, we all know that there is no single government in this world that can employ all of its citizens. So the question is, how is he going to balance all those fallouts vis-a-vis have a nationalistic image by reaching out to people who are not his supporters and including them in government? Because he's got to have a national government. He has to have people who supported and people who didn't support, so that he can give that kind of national outlook. How is he going to balance that? That is the main question that we can look at. But as to these individuals, I don't know much.
There's been mention of even someone like Kenneth Marende making a return to Parliament, either House, maybe the Senate or the National Assembly, probably as Speaker. Do you think that would be a nice compromise?
Oh, that would be an excellent compromise. Kenneth Marende is the kind of individual who goes beyond ethnicity. He's very eloquent, very well spoken, and when you think of Kenneth Marende, you do not think of him in his capacity as tribe, but you look at him in his capacity as a lawyer, very good at what he does, and it would be interesting if that were considered. However, one needs to look again back to 2022, because that is how we think in Kenya. And yes, and right now it is about convincing Ruto that the Jubilee party will give him 100% support, mainly from Central Province. And so whoever will be given those positions eyeing 2022, eyeing Ruto as a possible candidate for president. And also that ties in with Uhuru's legacy, because that is a promise he made to Ruto's supporters, and he cannot let them down.
Now the issue that Jubilee has to contend with is their high numbers in both houses. They have clear majority. Even without intending to, they could appear overbearing in some cases, and that could hurt the other side. Do you think it's possible to get someone who can use or marshal these numbers positively, in as far as probably in aiding Uhuru in securing his legacy?
You see what Duale is already doing just even before we get started.
He's already looking at how he's going to use those numbers to cause even more division.
You just had another politician saying yesterday that they had tyranny of numbers, now they have super tyranny of numbers. They don't know what they're going to do with those. Those kind of sentiments points you towards where we are heading, and which is extremely dangerous, because you could use those numbers to sort of shape your legacy in the right way, and Uhuru can use, at least for now, because those numbers will start disintegrating. Like I said, people will start coalescing around new epicenters, and Uhuru won't enjoy those numbers anymore. But for now, I think he can use it to shape his legacy in the right way. But also don't forget that politicians don't do things for the sake of it. The key principle for most politicians is always to win election and to win next election. And so I think whomever they appoint at whichever level, it will be what will this add to our numbers, what will this add to our camp. So someone like Marende, for example, he might look good professionally, but the question is, what is he bringing to the Jubilee camp?
I'm looking at a very interesting photos in the dailies to do with this. The president yesterday went to Harambee House, and of course he was flanked by a lot of cabinet secretaries, but also very much present there. And we have two photos for this. Page 7 of the Standard. Aden Duale, Garissa Township MP-elect Aden Duale, very much present, walking right next to the president. On the Daily Nation, page 4, yes. You have CS Matiang'i because the issue was about security, national security, so the CS, of course, understandable. President there, right next to him, walking step by step, and even the nation describes him has him here as National Assembly Majority Leader, Aden Duale. Clearly, he is positioning himself to go back to that position. But really, despite the much criticism that we may have of his leadership style, Aden Duale did deliver for Jubilee.
Well, in terms of insulting
and marshalling the numbers in the National Assembly, he did deliver.
There was no need for Duale. It was about Uhuru and Ruto. He was just a mouthpiece. But let me get to this, the risk, as you had mentioned, about having the tyranny of numbers. We run a risk of majoritarian excesses, all right? So then you have people who understand that because they are the majority, they may end up misusing the power of majority. Now, those majoritarian excesses can only call for a judiciary that seems to be robust. This, now more than ever, the judiciary, led by its CJ, must seem to be ready and competent both in its posture and deed. This is when Kenyans will rely, or else we will even have, I mean, you don't know, you could even have the possibility of return to a one-party state. Majoritarian rules are usually very unpredictable. They end up doing so much damage sometimes because they know no one checks them. For Aden Duale, I think in terms of marshalling, you said he marshaled the members from time to time. Aden Duale is a mouthpiece for William. I don't think William will do away with him. William is quite
the deputy president.
William Ruto, the deputy president. He's quite a tenacious character. So that tenacity, he will want a channel for that tenacity in a time when he will be courting other people. So he would want to accomplish what he wants accomplished that will not be looking too good through Aden Duale, while on the other side speaking on the cheek and saying, this is so wrong, we need to get together and move forward. Probably he's the one who has told her that, you know what, time to kick out Ouko, but it will not come from me. So Aden will communicate what he thinks. Just as, you know, Muturi was a loyalist, not just a mere supporter, a loyalist for Uhuru. Jump! How high, sir? All right? Now, what is going to happen very differently is that if we have people who are so loyal to the president, then the deputy president, because of his ambitions, will create trouble. And he is a vicious fighter. Okay.
The more you talk about Aden Duale, the more I'm thinking. Now you know him, right? But based on what people like the way you're describing him, I'm thinking he's a very smart man.
Oh yeah.
He's a very, very smart man. Because the same was said about, for instance, the late Nicholas Biwott. But look at the moves he pulled. So I think
which moves did he pull?
Okay. Being presidential to the executive.
But going to his grave without a legacy.
The other very interesting names mentioned here, moving away from issues of
Charles Nyachai.
I'm seeing even Gatundu South MP Moses Kuria has expressed sentiments. He says, in fact, he's the one who says Speaker Muturi is a front runner because we will only change as much as there is a vacancy and retain as much as possible. This is according to Moses Kuria. But even him, he says that I did a lot of my constituency work in my first term and would be looking for a leadership role in the 12th Parliament. So even yes, probably as a deputy majority whip.
But everyone wants to be something, you know.
That would counter the narrative that they're trying to push of trying to coalesce to put the nation together. Right? Because those are not the representatives of an inclusive and coherent country.
And probably the nation viewers need to understand that these are very influential positions. Even the deputy minority leader,
even the whip, leave alone leader, deputy minority whip is at the level of what used to be an assistant minister, cabinet secretary. It's a very
given government vehicle, an office, including government security and all those things. It does come with quite a lot of perks, and so you are the cream of Parliament, even the deputy minority.
And those are the new epicenters, you know. If Uhuru and Raila exit the scene, those are the new epicenters around where people, I mean, politicians and voters will be all calling.
Yes. Now let's flip the coin and talk about the opposition and the positions they also seek to fill. The leader of minority, their whips, because Jacoyo Midio is no longer there. Of course, Francis Nyenze has been very much criticized over his performance in the last National Assembly. Of course, that position will have to go to someone in ODM now. So probably quite a number of changes. ODM is the second biggest party, so definitely they will have to take that.
They were even in the last parliament, but anyway,
they went in as a
coalition.
They went in as quad. There were quad MPs. This time round, there is no NASA MP. It is Jubilee party, then ODM, then these other parties. But now, when it comes to the opposition, even with their little numbers, how should they go about? Because fine, on the Jubilee side, they're haggling over whether or not to secure the president's legacy or Deputy President William Ruto's ambitions for 2022. But for the opposition, the problem is totally different. Even how to handle the Jubilee numbers in Parliament is a problem.
What the opposition needs to do is to ensure that the right people with loud, clear voices, people with charisma, will be able to counter that majority that Parliament now is facing with Jubilee. And so it is a very interesting opportunity for the opposition because they have to re-strategize. They do not have the usual faces. They're going to have to look for younger people. That's what I would suggest. People who are going to appeal to this younger generation and this new style of politics to ensure that they continue to make sure there are checks and balances.
You say they need to have someone loud. By loud,
what I mean loud is it's not necessary in terms of decibel. I say in terms of the voice that they have, a clear message, a message that says, in as much as Honorable Raila is not the president, that they are still a force to reckon with. They will still ensure checks and balances. They will still be that voice that will ensure that majority does not take over. That would be my opinion for the opposition.
Tall order, Rafa.
Yeah, it's a tall order. I think the opposition needs to re-strategize. They need people who are going to reinvigorate their strongholds and their base. They need people who are going to focus on issues. They need people who are not just going to focus on numbers because they do not have the numbers, but on issues to win over the public. I'm seeing some of the names that are being proposed there. You know, John Badi, Opio, and I think we were talking about. What's the name of this Rarieda MP?
Yes, Otiende Amolo.
Otiende Amolo. Some very good characters. People are even proposing for like Babu. But remember, there are two things. One, you need someone who is going to represent the party leader in Parliament. So it can't just be anyone. It just can't be about charisma. It just can't be about professionalism. It just can't be about competence. It has to be someone who represents the party leader, who is not in the in both houses. It's unfortunate that people like my colleague David, you know, David was vying. He's not, because this would have been, you need a more youthful person who is going to help you.
But that role of leader of minority, would you safely give it to a first-time member?
Well, it depends on how deep they are.
Because you need to have an understanding of the standing orders as well, and it does take time.
The appointment to that position will need someone who is ideologically clear and knows what, for example, the party leader represents, has stood for over the years, and that he therefore has to espouse what the Raila Odinga has stood for over the years. So this person must also have been a consistent person, not a flippant character, right? You know, the opposition is going to have Public Accounts Committee and Public Investments Committee as well, which are the watchdog committees of Parliament. Now, you have the likes of Mbadi who have tried. You remember Mbadi running for PSC but losing it to Gumbo, all right? And those simmering problems, but you have strong characters. You know, you have Gladys Wanga, you have Aisha Jumwa, you have Millie Odhiambo, you have quite a number of strong characters. Otiende Amolo makes for a very brilliant person. He's the immediate former chair of the, he's the immediate former ombudsman, the chair of CAJ, Commission of Administrative Justice. So the opposition will have to think very clearly who is able to articulate the stance not only of ODM, but of the opposition at large. Who is this who understands the coast politics and understands the Western politics and understands the country's politics? Who is this who is able to be appreciated in places where probably Raila Odinga was not really appreciated? Who is this who's going to make it count to, you know, to the minority who did not have their way? Half of the country that is led by Raila Odinga will have only one mouthpiece from time to time, and that's the minority leader. It will take reflection to get that person, and depth is important, and those are the instances where I miss characters like Omar Hassan, if he had run for parliamentary seat, or even Senate in Mombasa, because the gentleman is very solid and ideologically very clear. And I hope they're able to get people who are not seen as mere rabble rousers and noisemakers, not a match for Duale, but someone who is way, way above Duale.
But don't you think that even Jubilee's choice could influence or could inform what the opposition decide to go, or who the opposition decides to go with? If at all you're given Aden Duale as your opposite number,
well, we'll get millions.
You have to
Fred, to me, I think this is one of the most interesting parliaments we've ever had as a country. Simply because we've seen in the past, or the past parliament, that many people adopted an us versus them strategy. And now most of them did not make it back. For the people who have come in, they now recognize that first of all, we are accountable to our community, we are accountable to our constituency, we are accountable to our county, and we are accountable to the nation. Because when you come to national legislation, coming up with laws and policies, you're doing it for the nation. So they now realize that to prosper or to boost their chances to get to be re-elected, at county level, they need to work with national government. That is something that now very many people have realized. And when you look at the intonations that most of these leaders have come up with, again, I point out Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, for instance, he now knows that he has to work with people who are in government to be able to develop Kisumu, because Kisumu has a lot of potential to transform in terms of industrialization, to employ very many people in that county. And to achieve that, he needs to work collectively with other key stakeholders. Now, the members of parliament now realize that for me to prosper, I need to work with my governor. And if this is a stand that the governor has taken, then my position has got to be reflective at constituency level and in national parliament.
Not necessarily to be successful.
Now, in national parliament, they now realize that people who go in and become very dormant do not get re-elected. People who are very active, boost their chances for re-election. Now, how will the members of the current parliament, or the people who are getting into the current parliament, act? Will they adopt an us versus them strategy, or will they now start dealing with national issues? Well, because as I've said before, NASA is now disintegrating. Even in parliament, you'll be seeing it very soon, because the interests of ODM may be a bit different from the interests of Wiper in parliament, because the Wiper politicians will have some certain interests of development in their areas that they will supersede that partisan kind of approach, to say that for the sake of developing of our people, the development of our people, we need to come up with such motions or support such motions. So with the opposition, the same. If what I've had been discussed here is true, that there is the 2022 there's a 2022 arithmetic coming in parliament, then also there are people who will try to be aligned to national kind of development vis-a-vis others who will be aligned to 2022 politics.
But I think, let me just add that the people, particularly minority leaders, who will be angling for most of these positions, are most likely going to be people who have, you know, a national ambition at some point, who will be looking for, you know, would this create a platform for me to grow post 2022? Would it throw me to the gubernatorial post? But much more, Are they angling for, you know, the presidency at some point? So it's going to be ambitions for them as well.
Okay, and of course, probably through a spanner in the works, there are quite some powerful female MPs, even in the opposition. Don't you think that they could make at least have a lead of minority who's a woman?
I like Aisha Juma, especially because she comes from the coast, and I feel a lot of women from that region have not been given the prominence they deserve. So that would be very, very interesting.
She's been lined up for a position, at least a minority chief whip, but when it comes to a leader of minority?
Leader of minority, again, what David is pointing out, you're looking at people who are vying for 2022. And this is very important.
There's an election, Eric.
Yes. this is how it works.
Unfortunately.
And yes, unfortunately. So whoever will come in is going to be jostling, as David has said, for their position, for their legacy, for their
And there's no female MP who appears to have such ambitions?
It's
too soon.
It's too soon to call.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, time for another break. When we return, we now look at this other group of people who run the risk of being forgotten, and these are the people who lost in the elections. Remember, quite a number of big names fell by the wayside during the just concluded elections. What way forward for them? That after the break.